Welcome to our first Commissioner School Counselor Advisory meeting. We thank you all for being here and logging in to join us today. Just as a heads up, today's meeting is being recorded and will be placed on the web for other people to watch at a later time. So wanted to make sure everyone knew that the meeting is being recorded. Before we get started today, we're going to do a quick attendance and housekeeping. Just as a reminder, please keep your camera on so that we can connect to one another while meeting virtually. It's sometimes hard to be in these virtual meeting spaces when we're not able to see each other and be with each other. So we'd love for you to have your camera on so we can do that. Next, we want to make sure that you check your microphone real quick and make sure that it is muted. We don't want to hear any conversations that we shouldn't hear throughout today's meeting, but we do have set times to make sure that we get feedback from you. So during those times, we'll want you to unmute so that we can get feedback from our advisory board. Next, we'd like you to stay engaged and join in the conversation. Your voice is valuable. Your voice is the reason why we have the advisory group. So we want to make sure that you are participating and that you know that we want to hear your input from our school counselors throughout the state. Again, for those that just joined, remember our advisory council meetings, they are recorded and posted online. And now I'm going to ask Heather Moore. Heather, are you in the room with us this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Heather is going to take attendance for us. So when she calls your name, if you can just unmute and let her know that you are here, that would be wonderful. Heather, I'm going to turn that over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to start with Courtney Benefield from Glasgow Independent.
Here.
Perfect. Alicia Bush from Warren County. Rachel Caswell from Fort Thomas Independent. Strozzy Collins from Jefferson County. Chesley Crane from Simpson County.
Here.
Scott Danner from Union County.
I'm here.
Kelly Fox from Boyd County.
I'm here.
Fatima Fesson from Whitley County.
I'm here.
Terry Hall from Boone County. John Hargis from Pulaski County.
I'm here.
And I'm so sorry, I think I skipped Susan Gibbs from Corbin Independent. Okay. Mary Lewis from Berea Independent.
Here.
Julie Link from Russellville Independent. Jessica Longland from Boone County. Carla McCarty from Paintsville Independent. Carrie McGrath from Clark County. Antonio Melton from Fayette County. Paula Moore from Jefferson County. Cordia Pickerel from Jefferson County. Santina Plotner. Garrick Lee Ratliff from Craft Academy.
Here.
Mania Reynolds from Jefferson County.
Here.
Mindy Rose from Callaway County. Carl Shinsigua from Graves County.
Here.
Jelena Wheeler from Russell Independent. Chloe Wilcher from Lincoln County. and Kristen Williamson from Clark County.
I'm here. Chloe's
This
here.
is
I didn't
Mindy.
get my mouse to work.
That's okay. I got you, Chloe.
Thank you.
You're
This is
welcome.
also Mindy Rose. My mute wouldn't come off, but it is working now. I am here.
That's okay. I've got you as well. Thank you. And that's everybody on the list.
Okay, thank you so much, Heather. After the meeting, I know that we have a few people that have texted or emailed and said that they were going to be a few minutes late. So we'll do a final call for anyone that we didn't get attendance for at the beginning. Thank you so much. You all, I have dropped the prior meeting minutes into the chat box for your approval. This was from our very last meeting last school year. So I want to give you just about 2 minutes to read those over, and then I'm going to ask for someone to approve those minutes in a second. So I'm going to pause for just a moment to give you time to read those minutes. All right. Do I have anybody that will approve our prior meeting minutes?
Mindy Rose, approve.
Thank you, Mindy. Do I have a second?
Kristen Williamson, second.
Thank you, Kristen. You guys, before I move on, I just want to make sure up on your Zoom box. So if you look at your picture on Zoom, you're going to see 3 little dots. If you can hit those little dots and make sure that your name is displayed on your Zoom box, that's going to help our wonderful volunteer, Heather, as she's taking minutes to know exactly who is speaking and who is not. So if you can do that, if it does not show your name on your Zoom box, hit those 3 little dots and go down to rename and type your name on there. That would be lovely. Thank you all so much. All right, we want to start our meeting off with an inclusion activity. This is always something that we try to model because we want everyone to feel welcome and relaxed and a part of our meeting today. So today we're going to talk just a moment about gratitude. And we know that being intentional around gratitude is kind of like a booster shot for our soul. It helps us to focus on things that are going right instead of sometimes being focused on things that are going wrong or things outside of our control. So if you will, in the chat box, type in there, what is one thing you are grateful for at work? I was specific to say at work, just so we can see what are you thankful for right now in your work setting. All right, I'm going to pull up. I see supportive coworkers, amazing coworkers, admin team, getting to see your students. I love how many team things that I'm seeing. We know we can do hard things. Our job is filled with hard things, but we can do those hard things when we have a great team and a supportive leader. In our all-team KDE meeting yesterday, we talked about gratitude as well. And I have to say that I have an amazing team. I feel exceptionally supported and valued and heard, and that is something that is worth its weight in gold. And it looks like you guys have those same feelings. So I am glad that you are being supported and you have a great team at work. That's awesome. All right, and then the next question I have for you, in thinking about leadership, so sometimes we don't always think about leaders that we work with and a quality that they possess that I'm truly thankful for. So Dr. Tucker is on today, and he is a leader at Kentucky Department of Education, and I can honestly say that he supports me 100%. He makes sure that I have everything I need to do my job well. And that means a lot because sometimes we can fight for just the basic things to be able to do our job well. And when we don't have to do that, that makes a big difference. So tell me, in thinking about leadership for you, and it doesn't have to be your principal, just leadership in general. What's one quality that you're always thankful for if a leader has? I like that. Judy says caring about me as a whole person. Scott, I think that is so important. Like, we want to be pushed to grow. So we want a leader that critiques, that helps correct it. And they have to, that critique needs to be done in kindness with the right spirit, right? We can see people critique with not such a kind spirit. So we want to make sure that we are pushed, we grow, but that we are helped to grow. Supportive, the ability to listen, great listener, patience, the ability to recognize our own weaknesses and being able to find that strength in my teammate and lean to it, and respectful of it. Love that, Manaya. Honesty. Thank you, Dr. Tucker. A leader who trusts their staff. Yeah. So if I've heard this said quite a bit, if someone has to micromanage, that may mean they didn't hire the right person. So we want to be trusted as professionals. We want to know that our leaders trust us. All right. Thank you guys so much for participating in our Mindful Minute. Up next, we were supposed to have Dr. Fletcher here. He's our new Commissioner of Education. And right at the last minute, he got pulled into a situation that is going to prevent him from being here. And he sends his deepest regrets and apologies. He said he will be here at our next meeting because he wants to connect with the school counselor advisory. He wants to hear from you. So make sure you're at that next advisory group so that you can hear from Dr. Fletcher. We do, however, have Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker here with us, and he is our Deputy Commissioner of Education and our Chief Equity Officer here at the Kentucky Department of Education, and he would like to bring you greetings. Dr. Tucker, I'm going to mute my microphone and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Searcy. Good morning, everyone. And folks, as I said in the chat, I did not pay Dr. Searcy to say those kind things about me. I'm really the benefactor. I really benefit from working with great people like Dr. Searcy, who's really passionate about her work and really represents the great qualities that each of our school counselors represents each day. And thank you. You have a tremendous lift and you have a tremendous responsibility. It is a privilege to be a part of these meetings, but also it's a privilege to bring greetings on behalf of Commissioner Fletcher, as well as the Kentucky Board of Education. Commissioner Fletcher is really looking forward to meeting with this group, listening, not just meeting with you, but listening and putting into action some of the suggestions that you have. I don't have to tell you that you are certainly our trust brokers in our schools, not only with other colleagues, but also with students. And I got to thinking about this whole absenteeism thing that's really impacting this country, especially after COVID. And when Dr. Searcy began the DEIB activity, the inclusion activity, I thought immediately of a quote that I read recently, and I want to share that with you because I really think it exemplifies not only what you do, but I think it really gets to the heart of why we have not been able to reach, or certainly not eclipse, the rate of students being in school prior to COVID. Our attendance rates have not been where they should be in the last couple of years. And so I really spent some time thinking about this. And it reminds me of a quote in a book that I read recently. So if you will allow me to indulge 1 second, because I think it's so important, because it really, again, exemplifies the roles that you play. The many roles that you play in the success of students in our schools. And this quote is sort of like this. It says, being welcomed is an important aspect of the social contract between humans. But we can only be welcomed if we have been invited. And I think that is so powerful because I cannot think of another group of professionals in our schoolhouse that openly welcomes all students. And my go-to as a teacher, my go-to as an assistant principal, principal, superintendent, you name it, was my school counselors, especially when I'm having to work with a student who is struggling. And sometimes even staff members, you provide counseling services to staff members. And so no one exemplifies the ability to invite everyone to the table more so than what our school counselors do. And so I think if we were to apply that thinking to building these relationships with students, ensuring that students and their parents feel included, they feel welcomed in our schools, I think we will quickly, and I do mean quickly, within the next couple years, at least reach those levels of students' attendance that we had prior to COVID. And so thank you, thank you for being so inviting. And what you do can be a lesson for all of us. And that is to create an environment where students feel welcome. I mean, no one wants to come to a place where they're not welcomed. We do know there are some other issues as it relates to the absenteeism, but I guarantee you, regardless of all the research studies that are out there, I guarantee you, if we were to spend time asking students, why haven't they come back? I guarantee you the number one reason will be, well, it's not a place that I feel included. I don't have anyone that I can turn to in terms of establishing a relationship, in terms of having this feeling of not letting someone down. I need to be here. And so we need to make sure our students have that feeling that they need to be at school. Because we do know that when students and staff have this sense of belonging, they feel included, it opens so many other aspects of school. It allows so many other aspects to be successful, to take root when kids feel as if they belong in school. So again, thank you for what you do each day. But also, as I always ask, take time to care for yourself and engage in self-care, because we ask you to take on so many roles, so many duties. And I guarantee you, a couple of you are thinking right now, well, I have this to do. I'm in this meeting, which is so, so important, but I still have this to do. And I can guarantee you a couple of our colleagues who will be signing in on a little later were probably pulled in or pulled out of a meeting to do something else. So again, do take time to engage in self-care, and your voice, as Dr. Searcy mentioned, is so important to the success of our entire school system, our entire state. So thank you. Thanks, Dr. Searcy. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. I appreciate that, and I think you encompass the heart of a school counselor perfectly. We want to make sure that our students and our families, they feel welcomed in our school, that they know they have a trusted adult, someone that is on their side, that wants to see them succeed. And that's one of the qualities I think about school counselors instantly. All right, we are going to go on. And before I introduce our first speaker, I do want to say that this year we have made a concerted effort. Like, we really want to hear more from you all. So when we do presentations, we have designated time at the end to get your feedback, to get your input. How did that presentation hit on your soul that day or today? What are some things you would like to add to the conversation around those topics? Because we need to make sure that in everything we do, we include your voice and your perspective from the ground level. You're in the schools, you're doing the work, so we always want to make sure that we keep that at the forefront of every decision that is made. So now we're going to welcome to our group Stephanie Bunge, and she is our health program administrator here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And she is going to talk about our youth risk behavior survey. This is something, the new data just came out, and this is exceptionally important to us as school counselors. So Stephanie, I want to turn it over to you. Are you in with us this morning?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Stephanie. Would you like to drive, or would you like me to drive?
I think I'll drive.
Okay. Yep, no problem. Give me just a second. I'm going to give you the ability to share your screen, and then I will stop sharing.
All
Okay, there you
right.
go, Stephanie. The floor is all yours.
Okay, let me get that pulled up real fast. And then I will introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about the work that I do at the department. Okay. Are you seeing the correct slide, Michelle?
We are.
Okay, good. Sometimes, you see the presenter screen. You never know how that's going to roll. All right. So thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. My name is Stephanie Bunge, and I am actually part of the school health branch at the Kentucky Department of Education. We are actually a fairly new branch, which is exciting, and actually maybe one of the more positive things that came out of COVID was leadership understood the importance now of school health. And so have developed a branch. So we have our state nurse consultant that sits there, the work that I do. We have some regional staff, Infinite Campus data person as well. So our program at the department is funded by a federal grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. So we do a lot of professional development and technical assistance with schools and districts across the state. Really focusing on the whole school, whole community, whole child model. And then within that, we focus more on physical education and physical activity, the nutrition environment, and the management of chronic conditions with students. So we work a lot with health and PE teachers, food service staff, school nurses, et cetera. In the past, well, for many years now, since 1997, Kentucky has received funding from the CDC separately to conduct the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, or YRBS. And so we have a lot of very rich data as it relates to this source. Moving forward, it will be a different agency that will be conducting the YRBS in Kentucky, and I'll talk about that later on. But as Michelle said, this is brand new data. This is from 2023, and this will be specific to Kentucky. But actually, just as of yesterday, the CDC released all of the 2023 YRBS data. And so that will be, that's available on the CDC website, which is great because then we can kind of go back and compare our data to other states. But that was just released yesterday, so I haven't been able to include that. But we will look at Kentucky level data, and I'll start a little bit with some background and process, just so you understand. I mean, if you like data like I like data, then I kind of want to know the background and where it came from, et cetera, how it's collected. So as I said, YRBS was originally first collected in Kentucky in 1997. These are the areas that the YRBS monitors, and these are the 6 categories of the highest risk, health risk behaviors that CDC identified among youth and adults. So we have injuries and violence, including suicide, that's measured, tobacco, alcohol and other drugs, sexual risk behaviors, dietary behaviors, and physical activity. Now, some of you, many probably of your districts have participated in the Kentucky Incentives for Prevention survey, the KIP survey. That is different and separate, obviously, than this one, but obviously there's a lot of overlap within the categories that are collected within that data set as well. And really a lot of them mirror each other, and we highly recommend looking at your KIP data because that's going to really give you your community level data. But you can see some differences as in the physical activity, the sexual risk behaviors, the dietary behaviors that the KIP doesn't necessarily collect. So the 2023 administration occurred beginning in January of 2023. We have an amazing relationship with our Division of Family Resource and Youth Service Centers. So our FRISCs across the state are instrumental in collecting this data, helping us collect this data within the schools that are selected. YRBS is only administered in the odd numbered years. So only every other year in the spring semester. There's usually about 50 middle schools and about 60 high schools that are randomly selected to participate. And then within those schools, it's really only about 2 to 3 second period classes that participate. So it's not the entire school or an entire grade. The participation in the survey is voluntary and it's completely anonymous. Schools and districts are not released. The students' information is never collected or released. And because of the timing of this administration, that it begins in January, and I know that's winter, but it's technically the spring semester, that we still had passive parental permission because that was before the passage of the Senate Bill 150. So moving forward, obviously, there will be active parental permission obtained. So here's a summary, just to kind of give you a little glimpse of the numbers of how many students participated. So for the high school YRBS in Kentucky, there was almost 2,000 students from about 48 high schools, and then almost 1,500 middle school students in 37 middle schools across the state. So it is a small sample, but it is scientifically drawn, proven, weighted, etc. So the data is generalizable to the entire state. So if you were ever to look back at the KIPP survey that I mentioned earlier, statewide, they have a ton more participation, right, than what you see here. But ours is a little bit more generalizable. We can say high school students, middle school students as a whole, as opposed to just 10th graders, et cetera. So that just is some of the differences. And again, because of the small sample size, the data only is returned to us at a state level. There is no school, district, or county level data available. Demographics for the high school. I just kind of wanted to show you that while it is a random sample of schools and a random sample of students, it is pretty representative. So there's a pretty even pool of male and females that are included per grade level. And then the demographic, the race ethnicity information that you see here mirrors that of our state as a whole. So just wanted you to be aware of that. So let's talk about differences. This is always one of the main questions is when we get new data set is what changed? Is anything, new, different, worse, better, et cetera? And also there weren't a ton of differences, honestly, between 21 and 23. And we'll look at those in just a second. But I kind of want to give you a perspective of when this data was collected, because 2021 was one of those kind of different situations. Usually, like as I mentioned, we would collect this in the spring, but spring of 2021, we still had schools that were in and out of virtual and in-person instruction due to COVID. And so YRBS can only be given in school settings. So it was postponed to the fall of 2021 when schools were finally back, usually full-time for in-person instruction. And then 2023, we went back to our normal spring administration timeframe. So that'll play a part in here in some of the differences that you're going to see. So for the middle school, there was a few differences from 2021 to 2023. The percentage of students who were ever bullied on school property, that this was a significant increase from 2021. But as I mentioned, the 2021 administration was fall, and the question specifically states in the past 12 months. So as you can imagine, they weren't necessarily in the building as much for 2021. So really, quite honestly, this increase kind of makes sense in a way. Still a high percentage, but that was probably part of the reason for the increase. And then percentage of students who played on at least one sports team in the past 12 months as well, that increased, but that also makes sense because those opportunities were back again for students more so in 23 than 2021. A couple other ones, percentage of students who reported that their mental health was most of the time or always not good. That is a statistically significant increase from 2021 to 2023. So we're looking at about a quarter of middle school students who feel that way. And percentage of students who reported that some of their classroom teachers provided short physical activity breaks during regular class time. This was a significant decrease. And again, I think it goes back quite honestly to the timing. I know that for my own kids, there was a lot more physical activity opportunities during COVID. The importance was there a little bit more. And I think now we've just kind of gotten back into our kind of normal routines, and that's not being included as much, possibly. There could be many reasons, but we did see a decrease in that. As far as the high school, just a few different significant changes here from 21 to 23. It goes back again to that bullied on school property, an increase just like the middle school students. Percentage of students who drank a bottle of, and sorry for the typo, plain water, not plan water, one or more times a day. That was a significant increase. I think we also see a lot of more water refill stations, and schools are more likely, I think, to let students carry water bottles now. So that could play a role in this as well. And percentage of students who missed one or more days of school because their mental health was not good. This was a significant increase from 21 to 23, about 30%, and kind of goes back to what Dr. Tucker was discussing. This could, be one of those roles of chronic absenteeism as well. I'm sure you all are aware of that. All right, so I pulled out some top data that I thought is more pertinent to this audience. I could go into detail. I mean, this is just teeny tiny sliver of the data that's available. And I'll put the link to the full data on our webpage in the chat once I finish. But I wanted to pull out some things that were probably of more interest to this group. But again, there's a lot of data and it can be broken down quite a bit, excuse me, for each data point. So just wanted you to be aware of that this is just a tiny, tiny bit of it. So let's look at mental health issues. So this is percentage of high school students who felt sad or hopeless. And basically the question is, felt sad or hopeless during the past 2 weeks where they didn't want to do or didn't do their normal daily activities. And you can see that over the years, it remained fairly consistent. And now we are seeing an uptick in that. So there has been a significant increase from 2013 to 2023. Some of these slides that I'm going to show you are trends that you just saw in that last one. Some I'm just going to kind of give you the numbers per data point so that you kind of have a good idea of what it looks like across the board. So for this slide here, percentage of middle school students who did something to purposely hurt themselves without wanting to die. So this is a self-harm question. The total is 24.6% of middle school students, so a quarter of our middle school students. As you can see, there is a significant difference between male and females for this one. I think as it relates to a lot of the mental health data points, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise that females are more likely or have a higher percentage than their male counterparts. That is not new information, but it does put numbers to that. And this actually, we've asked this question for many cycles now. I can't remember now, I have to go back and look, and it remains pretty consistent that this is the same total percentage. It's usually around between 20 and 25%. This is percentage of middle school students who ever seriously thought about killing themselves. And so this is the suicidal ideation. And this is, again, about a quarter of middle school students. And again, you're going to see there's a much higher, or much larger rate for females than males as well. And as you see, we have this data broken down by grade level and race ethnicity, and then it can go even deeper into females within these grade levels, females within different race ethnicities, et cetera. So again, there's a lot more to this, but this is a decent snapshot to see. Percent of high school students who ever seriously considered attempting suicide, and this is so the same, but the total is 18.6%. This is still a significant difference between male and female, although it doesn't look quite as much as some of the other slides for the middle school students, but that is the case here as well. And this is percent of high school students who attempted suicide, and this has actually remained consistent. There's been no change since 2003. That doesn't mean that suicidal ideation hasn't increased or anything like that, or completions, but this for attempts has remained fairly consistent over the years. Middle school students who missed one or more days of school, we kind of mentioned this, or report the change from 21 to 23 was more of reported their mental health was not good, but then it's asked, did you miss days of school because your mental health was not good? And so this is 20% of middle school students who missed at least one or more days. Again, going back to that chronic absenteeism, this could obviously play a role. And again, we see females are more likely than males. And there's actually a little bit of difference with race ethnicity is that Black students that is a significant difference between Black students and white students. Significant difference there. So that is it's hard to tell by this graph sometimes, but we have a very low percent of Native American students in the state. So the numbers always kind of are skewed a little bit, and sometimes again with Hispanic and Latino. So if you look at those little notes at the bottom, it kind of gives you a little hint as to if there was any significant differences between male, female, race, ethnicity, and grade level. Percent of high school students who missed one or more days of school, 30% here. So a little bit more than middle school students. So definitely something to be thinking about. Vaping, I think this is always a topic that's going on all the time in a struggle for schools and districts. The vaping, the numbers are kind of interesting. I'll be honest, the numbers don't always, I wouldn't say they match up necessarily with what you hear from again, school administrators or anyone that works in a school, just how much of an issue this is. But we'll look at the numbers because they are similar to the KIPP survey that I mentioned earlier. KIPP is being conducted this fall, so there are many districts working on that. So I'll be anxious to see what their numbers look like in comparing to what we have right now from 2023 as well. So percent of high school students who ever used an electronic vapor product. There really wasn't a significant difference, although it looks like there was a definite uptick in 2019, but we're looking at about 41, at least for 2023, 41% of students that have ever used an electronic vapor product. I think things you hear, you feel like it's much higher, and it could be, but this is the reporting from students. Percent of high school students who use an electronic vapor product daily. And so that was, they were asked on the past 30 days. And so this was all 30 days of the past 30 days for this reporting. And that was 8.7% of students. And that is a significant difference between our 12th graders as opposed to the other grade levels. They are more likely. Currently used, these are high school students that used vapor product on school property. This was during the 30 days before the survey, about 11% in 2023. High school students who used a vapor product to vape marijuana or THC. This was a question that we added for the first time in 2023. It is also, there's a similar question on the KIPP survey, and that was 11% of students. So this is, I think, becoming a little more common. We'll have to see how these numbers trend in this year and the upcoming year, because YRBS will be conducted again in 2025, so spring. I'm going to go a little bit into dietary behaviors and physical activity. This may not be something you focus on, but I just feel there's always a strong connection between all aspects of physical health. And so I think it's not fair to discount these things as they relate, especially to mental health of students as well. So I think they're just super important. So I just wanted to pull out a few things, and these things I think, especially some of these slides right here, definitely relate. So this is a question about dietary behavior, but it's more related to eating disorders. So this is high school students who tried to lose weight or to keep from gaining weight by going without eating, taking diet pills, laxatives, etc. And that was 42% of high school students. I think, again, not shocking, there is a significant difference between males and females as it relates to this, but it's still a decent amount, honestly, of males that are experiencing these as well. And I think eating disorders are very much tied to mental health as well. So these are newer questions that we added because there's a Kentucky Eating Disorder Council at the state level that was legislated a few years ago. And when this group got together, there's no data, quite honestly, in Kentucky on eating disorders. And so we're trying to at least come up with something to have a good understanding and to create awareness. And so we added this question and this one right here, which is high school students. It's basically a binge eating question, and all research across the country shows that the most common eating disorder is binge eating, as opposed to some of the others that you would kind of hear a little bit more about, but it is binge eating. And so that is half of our high school students. And I know the question is worded a little strangely, but I think gets at the heart of it right here. So seeing that again, tied to, I think, some mental health as well. Middle school students who used social media several times a day. We used to have a screen time question on the YRBS, but have moved to social media instead, because that's kind of more the risk behavior, I think, that we're seeing with students. And so several times a day, the total is 63% of middle school students. And that is a significant difference that you see between 8th graders versus 7th graders and 6th graders, which I think would make sense. I would say many 6th graders have phones, but not all, where they have access, but they are all on social media quite a bit. And this is the social media for high school students, even more so. I have a couple few other data points real fast that relate to kind of a wide variety of topics that I thought this group might be interested in. This one, I call myself naive all the time. This one kind of always blows my mind. This is the second time we've asked this one, but this is high school students who ever saw someone get physically attacked, beaten, stabbed, or shot in their neighborhood. And that is about 20% of our high school students in Kentucky that have seen this. And I think it, for some reason, it's just crazy to me, but is definitely there and obviously affect our students greatly. High school students who ever experience sexual dating violence, this is 14% of our high school students. Definitely a difference between male and female, but definitely something to consider. I think relationships should be a part of health education as well. I don't know that students get as much health education as needed, but something that you all could look at as well, because I know that many of you are probably involved in relationship education as well. High school students who ever felt that they were treated badly or unfairly in school because of their race or ethnicity. This was 30.8% of high school students. And obviously the race ethnicity markers down at the bottom of this slide, we can definitely see some significant differences, specifically with our Black students versus students, and all three: Asian, Black, Hispanic, Latino versus white students. There's a significant difference between those groups. Percent of high school students who reported there's at least a teacher or other adult in their school that they can talk to if they have a problem. So again, trying to connect, some school connectedness, making sure students have someone they can rely on at school. And this is 67%, but that also shows that there's 30% of students who don't feel they have someone at the school that they could talk to, an adult. So I think flipping that data the other way, while this seems positive, obviously, I'm glad 67% of students, there's still a 30% that don't. Middle school students who would most likely talk with their parent or other adult family member about their feelings. So not just on the school level, but what are some of those protective factors that are occurring outside of school with students. And there's 31% of middle school students who had talked to their parents or other adults. And I think, as you can see with the grade level, that starts to decrease a little bit as they get a little older. Sleep. So middle school students who got 8 or more hours of sleep. I am huge on the sleep information. I think it is tied to so many things, mental health wise, physical health wise, for students, for anyone, quite honestly. So I'm always very curious about this. And so it's about 40% of middle school students who get about 8 or more hours of sleep on an average night. is the question itself on average school night, excuse me. So these are school nights. And then for high school students, it's a lot less. It's 18.4%. I think most of you probably understand the importance of sleep. But I know there's a lot of factors that go into this specifically for high school students that most likely have jobs. There could be extracurricular. There could be where they're having to help take care of siblings or family members. They have homework, et cetera. So there's a lot that goes into this. I think screen time can also play a role of needing to put screens down, where I think we're probably all guilty of that a little bit to get more sleep. But I just think we need to, discuss a little bit more the importance of sleep. And that's educating students, families, everybody. But I think it can play a role in everyone's health. Here's my information, and you'll have these slides, but this is the link to the YRBS webpage on the KDE website. So it's going to have all the data, but I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat. And I'm also going to go ahead and put the link to the CDC's website that has all of the 2023 data from the states that also participate, so you can compare. But I will stop sharing now so we can have that time for discussion, Michelle, as well, and any questions that you might have for me.
Stephanie, thank you so much for giving us that overview and making sure that we are aware of this new data that's gone out. So much of what you talked about has a direct correlation to school counselors and how we can work with students. So we are going to open this up to feedback. Dr. Tucker, I see you have your hand raised if you want to go on and unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Searcy. Stephanie, what a beautiful presentation. Obviously, some of the data is a bit discouraging and very somber, but thank you. And this is the real information that I believe our local boards of education, our state boards of education across the country, as well as our lawmakers should be focusing on. Our lawmakers should shift those who are obsessed with DEIB and whether or not it's positive or negative, should focus on this. Because the whole intent of DEIB is to address some of these things here. But I'm thinking maybe the strategy should be to directly get this information in their hands and say, this is so important and this is what we should focus on. And then my last question, Stephanie, is that, and I should know this, being a deputy at KDE, who do we share this with, this information with? And what happens after that? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I will say it's funny because YRBS at, I'll say, a state level is actually very common and used widely, right? The Department for Public Health, Kentucky Department for Behavioral Health and Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. I might have said that wrong, but Department for Behavioral Health, they utilize it a lot as well. We create lots of resources. We present this data at Frisky conferences. We present it at statewide meetings. So we have a state level, whole school, whole community, whole child subcommittee, and it has a couple of state board members and a lot of other state entities that are present, and we share that with them. I present it to various coalitions across the state. So we try to get it out as much as possible. As I mentioned, it's on our website. But sometimes I don't think it gets down to the level that you're referring to. And I would love to see that happen, quite honestly. It's a sharing of it in word of mouth, because there's obviously no one direct way, but think it could be huge.
Absolutely. Let's talk more about this, how we can really get this in the hands of some of our local and state decision makers.
Absolutely.
Okay, we also want to get some feedback. Dr. Tucker, thank you for that feedback. I agree. And Stephanie, just to give you a quick flower, I was in the western part of the state and someone asked if I had the opportunity to work with you and talked about how passionate you are for kids, and we definitely could see that throughout today's presentation. So folks from our School Counselor Advisory Committee, y'all, this is really where we want to hear from you. What stood out to you How do you think you could use this data, this report, to advocate for things that your students may need? Is there something, did you have an aha moment? We want to invite you to unmute and share your reactions and feelings and thoughts around this. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can drop it in the chat either way.
I liked the piece of data that discussed potential eating disorders. I have been for the past couple of years at our middle school and have seen a lot of students disclose concerns, whether they use the terminology eating disorder or specific, binge eating. And I've also kind of encountered that roadblock of there's not a lot of resources. It's not something that's tier one that we are providing, instruction on for our students. And so I feel like that's something that that's definitely a need. And so especially in you saying Kentucky doesn't have this specific data, what can we do at the school level or at the district level to help support students with making better choices or, with that data, with the limited resources that we have.
Thank you, Suzanne. I do actually hear that. There is a book that I used frequently when I was at the district level about eating disorders. And I think I have that at home. So if you email me, I can send that to you because it
Yes,
is highly effective.
I would love to have that. And I'll also just kind of anecdotally, I didn't keep specific data, the connection between students who did disclose self-harm or thoughts of self-harm and eating disorders. I just feel like in my experience, there seemed to be a connection there. And I always feel ill-equipped to help those students on that other side of things. And at one point reached out to some, community partners that were within our schools, and they shared the same things. They didn't have a lot of research or a lot of data or a lot of resources, especially in our small community. I'll definitely reach out for the name of that book.
Thank you. All right, Cordia, I want to highlight a thought, an aha moment that Cordia put in the chat. I think it's really important and something for us to think about. She said, I think my biggest aha moment is just knowing how small our African American, Latino, and Native American populations are, but how isolated, hurt, and alone they are feeling. I think that is exceptionally powerful, and you can see that throughout the data in various different questions that were asked. So as we navigate that and digest that information as school counselors, thinking about what is it that we can do in our realm to help our African American, Latino, Native American populations, and we saw that too in our Asian populations, feel more included, help to really reach out and build community and trust in relationships, and figuring out why that is. A strategy that I love using is actually called empathy interviews. Sometimes as educators, as adults, we think we know what the issues are with our students and families. And taking the time to sit one-on-one and asking what our students' experiences are in a safe and protective environment, such as the counseling office, can really give us some insight into some experiences they may be having at school that we are unaware of. If you're unfamiliar with empathy interviews, you can Google that. There's an article in the ASCA magazine from August that I wrote it, but you can walk through the steps on how to conduct empathy interviews. They are very powerful. Jessica, she stated, I'm at the elementary level, so I would be interested in gathering more data on elementary school, and can we do more prevention work on the elementary level? Stephanie, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I would love to have elementary data. It's just there's not a source out there, quite honestly. Across the country, there's not. For an elementary level, it would have to kind of be developed. But I highly recommend when I'm giving this information out, like at an elementary level, don't discount it because you see what's coming, right? Like you can look at the middle school data and say, these are the things that our students are going to be facing or participating in. So what, just like you stated, what at an elementary level can we do for prevention? We're hearing, anecdotally that vaping, right, at an elementary level is becoming an issue. And so we have to start earlier in preventing a lot of these health risk behaviors for youth. So I again, always recommend, even though we don't have an elementary data sources, to look at that middle school information.
Thank you, Stephanie. You all love the comments and the conversations that are happening. I just looked at the time and realized that we're running short. So we still have 2 more presenters. So I want to go on and shift and pivot. We do have the meeting chat that we'll be able to go back to and read. Thank you for those that dropped comments in that meeting chat. We greatly appreciate it. Up next, I want to introduce Judy Vandehar and Leslie McKinney, both here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And you heard Dr. Tucker talk about chronic absenteeism in the beginning of our advisory meeting today, and they are going to do a brief overview presentation on that chronic absenteeism. Judy and Leslie, I'm sorry we are running late. As school counselors, we sure do like to talk. And I apologize that we've kind of encroached on your time a little bit, but we would like to turn this over to you at this time.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And it's well worth the time listening to some of that powerful information. If it's okay, if I could share my screen, because I'm going to be toggling to another.
You should have access to share that now.
Another tool. Okay. Right.
While you're pulling that up, Judy, we have about 15 minutes. I know that's not enough time. We have one presenter after you. We may have to bring you back at
Okay.
our next advisory meeting.
Okay. So I think we can fly through, Leslie. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll go quickly through and try to hit the high points
Yeah, the
given
high points. Yeah.
what you all have already seen. And we'll also provide you with access to the presentation, I think. So if you go back and look at that in more detail and have more questions, we're happy to come back or follow up through email.
Yep, sounds good. And so my name's Judy. I'm in the Division of Student Success. I'm kind of stepping in for our chronic absent lead, Florence Chang, and happy to be here with Leslie. Can you see the slide moving?
We can.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll jump right in. My name is Leslie McKinney, and I'm a strategic data analyst and researcher with the department. And we have been studying this chronic absenteeism business for quite a while now. So we want to give you some highlights of sort of where we are as a state. This is obviously a critical group who has a lot of stake in the improvement, as Dr. Woods Tucker said, and where we go with chronic absenteeism. So just a quick definition and reminder, we're talking about students who are missing more than 10% of school, whether that be excused or unexcused. We want to make sure folks are not confusing this with truancy or with school's ADA. I mean, we are talking about those students who are missing a significant portion of their day. Moving on, and I am going to go kind of quickly, so I apologize for that. We started this study to really look at differences pre and post pandemic. And so for our pre-pandemic data, we are looking at specifically what's happened in the school years 2017-18. And then we're going to call post-pandemic, because we're still cleaning some data from last year, the 22-23 school year. And so when we look at counties, and this is just an overview to let you see how this is manifested across the state and concentrated in different areas. Pre-pandemic, most of the chronically absent, the school districts that were in these counties were concentrated mostly in the eastern part of the state. Now, I will tell you there's a strong correlation between household median income in the eastern part of our state and chronic absenteeism, a strong correlation, which really is in line with what we see in the research, which is poverty being a driving factor. When we look post-pandemic, we can see that that has spread throughout the state, is more deeply concentrated in those areas that were already largely hit. Sorry about that. If we can move on to the next, quick.
Sorry.
So the next thing we want to look at is understanding that this chronic absenteeism issue that we had certainly existed pre-pandemic, exacerbated by the pandemic, but that it is hitting different grade levels and different levels of schools in different ways. Historically, chronic absenteeism has been the highest in high school, and you can see those rates are the highest at high school. If you look at the blue line, that's the baseline of the chronic absenteeism rates pre-pandemic. The green represents post-pandemic rates. But what's really telling, I think, within this graph that we've put together for you here is the percentage increase between those two pieces of time. So you can see, particularly if we start to look at K-1-2 students, you're looking at 100% increases in the chronic absenteeism rates. And so really what we want to think about is that these kind of levels are really exceeding the capacity of the response systems that most schools probably had in place. They are looking at much larger numbers. If you think about a smaller district of 1,000 students, a 20% chronic absenteeism rate, which is the very low threshold of chronic absenteeism, you're talking about 200 students. And then you're looking at larger districts looking at 38,000 and plus. In Kentucky, just to go back a little, and you don't have to switch the screen, we're talking about upwards of almost 200,000 chronically absent students in the 22-23 school year. Um, we do we do have worsened rates when you compare those across the nation. And so, for example, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, we are seeing chronic absenteeism rates that exceed the national average. I will tell you also that if you're looking at being a part of teams who are looking to reduce chronic absenteeism rates and you're trying to think about goal setting, what most research would suggest is it takes about a 5% decrease to call that significant. Now, I want to throw that in really quickly and give you a stat that a lot of folks may be a little scared of. In the last round of national research, Kentucky came in last out of the states studied in terms of the reduction of significant chronic absenteeism. So, last of all the 40 states that contributed to that study. They were first in the percentage who had no change or who had worsened chronic absenteeism rates. And so I will tell you, I do anticipate seeing at the state level our chronic absenteeism going down a little with last year's data, not by much at the state level, but we will see some movement at the school and district level probably. And that's going to be very uneven as we go through. One of the things that we also know is that it affects chronic absenteeism is affecting all students, gifted students, students of different races and ethnicity. But we know that those students who come from historically um, groups that have less academic or educational opportunities, it just deepens those inequities. And so those are far more vulnerable to the chronic absenteeism rate, such as especially those students in foster care, homeless, and certain ethnicities. We also know, and I know I'm talking fast, so I hope that you'll stay with me. Um, Attendance Works and national organizations have studied chronic absenteeism for many years. What we do know through the research, however, is the traditional reasons why students were chronically absent pre-pandemic have largely changed. Those are still factors: transportation, food insecurities, um, the mental health things that you all have brought up. But what we see now is within these categories, and Attendance Works has essentially identified these four categories of major themes as to why students are chronically absent. We know that within those, we have just seen a growing number of factors as to why our students are absent. I'm going to skip all the way down. I'm not going to read through these, but I really want to point out one of the things that's come out of the research that we are really leaning into as a department, which is really looking at those misconceptions about the importance of school. You know, we came out of a pandemic where parents were home working from home and telecommuting. Students were able to work from home. We sent out a lot of messaging saying, hey, virtual school can be just as good. We can do it just as well, because that's at that time the best we could do. And now trying to put that genie back in the bottle and say, but given an option, school's the best place to be for a large number of reasons, and some of those for which Stephanie pointed. And I'm so excited about the numbers that she shared, because the mental health piece is also something coming out of the pandemic that we see is a huge concern and correlation, and not just the mental health of the students, but their family members. I was excited to see, and I shouldn't say excited, maybe that's the wrong word, but the work that they're doing on the sleep. Now we can also turn to correlations in sleep of parents and whether or not their kids are getting to school. And so we've done lots of studies and relationship studies on community factors outside of the school's control that are contributing to the chronic absenteeism rate. I'm going to jump quickly to Judy so she can get into the meat of some strategies, but thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. You do amazing data work on this topic and others. So really quick, you all obviously, and I don't want to insult anyone on this call, you all understand tiers. When we think about attendance, not just attendance, but dropout and all the things that we care about. Tier 1 is super critical. And then just to point out, you know, a lot of times we don't talk about the actual missing kids. We have over 3,000 kids that go missing in Kentucky that are reported to the state police. There are also those that don't get reported, but that's another topic for another day. So I'm going to quickly show you 2 resources that you should have access to kind of look at the actual list of students by tiers. And then we'll wrap it up so that we can hear you. So hopefully you can see my screen. So Insights, if you do not have it, please ask your IC liaison. Insights, this is the early warning tool. Hopefully you know about it, but I'm going to put a link in the chat to these resources. Insights was developed as a companion to the early warning tool so that you can look at school level trends and identify the students. So just for example, as far as absenteeism in Insights, what you can see automatically, this is a staging site, you can look at what is happening in this fake high school in 9th grade through 12th grade, and you can see your tiers of absenteeism. So obviously, if I'm focusing on my freshmen, the extreme tier 3, I can double click and it gives me the list of students. So there is so much to explore. You can also look at the reasons students are absent by weekday. You can look at it by period, excused, unexcused. What are the reasons? What is the highest day that we're missing students, and all of the different reasons? So, you know, this Insights also has an amazing set of dashboards around behavior, around course performance. So please check that out. And like I said, I will put a link to that in the chat. And then just to kind of go back, I'm really, due to time and really your voice is what matters here, just quickly highlight, you all know this, tier 1 being, you know, everyone wants to be in a kind and warm place. And to Stephanie's data point, around over 30% of kids say they don't have an adult. This relationship mapping is a strategy that is worth the time for all the educators I talk to in Kentucky that do it. You have every student's name, do it by grade level, depending on your size, on an index card, line them up, get every adult in the building to put a dot next to the kids they have a deeper connection with. And at the end of that, you can identify the students that don't. Obviously, extracurriculars, we've got to think about the adult well-being. Relevant and engaging learning is going to help keep kids wanting to be in school and stay in school. And then obviously, you know, Maslow before Bloom, we got to take care of the basic needs. And there is an interesting approach that one high school took, is they did a farmer's market and basically had food available the entire day, and it improved their attendance. Kids did not have to wait for the breakfast lunchtime. They were able to actually access food the whole day. And then communication, obviously the positive, more positive the better. And there's a lot of stuff on the other resource which I want to share with you. There is a chronic absenteeism webpage. I think Leslie will put that in the chat. They have Florence has done a lot of work with the communications office. So we have a campaign statewide. You may have seen some billboards, but there are also toolkits on KDE's absenteeism webpage that have a lot of friendly things that you can use within your own school or district for multiple purposes of communications and looking at strategy. So these are the discussion questions. I know their time is very limited, so I will probably stop sharing my screen.
Well, Judy, if you want to leave those up, we have about 5 minutes.
Okay,
So
okay, great.
if anyone would like to unmute and share any of your thoughts around these discussion questions, and then also we have some folks that have dropped stuff in the chat if they would like to share that. We would love to hear that as well. Chloe mentioned that her school has an awesome program to combat chronic absenteeism. Chloe, it looks like you unmuted right when I started to talk, so I'll turn that back to you.
Yes, sorry, I closed my door so I wouldn't be so loud to everybody in the hallway. We just call it Healthy Kids. And so there are different people in each part. I work at a high school that come together once a month and we look at a list of kids. So we have our attendance clerk that comes, we have a counselor that comes, our DPP comes, we have an assistant principal that comes, a nurse that comes. I know I'm our 21st century coordinator, like just different people from all over our building and our district that will come together. And we kind of put together a list of kids that we are concerned about. So our instructional coach comes too. And let's just say from a counseling standpoint, our counselor will meet with the other two counselors and we'll say, okay, what kids are on your radar? What kids might need extra support? So we'll give her a list. And then the nurse will have a list that kids need support. And then the attendance person has a list of like kids that are chronic letter are absent that we need to go to a home visit. And we all just have all this list of kids and we put it in what we call a workbook, which is an Excel spreadsheet. And we look to see how many the same kids we have. And we all have pretty much the same kids. And so then we each will take a kid and I don't want to say target them because that has more of a negative connotation, but we go and we try to offer extra supports. So we will go to their house and talk to their guardians or whomever they live with and ask them what they need from us. Or we offer different tutoring programs, or we bring them in to see, okay, are they getting extra support as far as like extra counseling services or just anything. So we just go and we just pour in to those kids. And sometimes teachers will come and share a kid with us too. And so we just have all these different people that come together and look at the whole child, essentially. Our youth service center lady is there too, and she talks about, the kids that are coming to her. And do we get everybody? Probably not, but we really do pour into these kids and we try to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. And it works out really well.
That sounds an awful lot like relationship mapping, Chloe.
Yeah.
And that is such an effective strategy when we're trying to make sure that our kids that are not engaging or they have under overrepresentation in various data points, that they are connected with someone at that school that can build a relationship and make sure they feel like they belong in our schools.
And if I could just make a plug as you're doing that to maybe also look at the kids on the highest risk on the early warning tool in your school, because what I hear over and over from people is that it's capturing kids that aren't on the radar. Because like you said, you all will likely identify the same kids. And then there's inevitably kids that are kind of in the side, it's just
That's what our DPP brings. Like
oh,
that's
awesome.
yes, he
Awesome.
brings the
Okay.
early warning. And then we all just bring a little bit of everything else. That way, if there is a student that is on his radar but not really on ours, we can still kind of look into that as well.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you guys for sharing. There's some other comments in the chat. We appreciate those. For time's sake, we are going to shift and pivot to our last presentation, but that's certainly not least. And I want to apologize to Alexis Jackson in advance because we are a little bit on time. Dr. Tucker, did you have your hand raised?
No, I'm just sorry I hit that button, but it could reflect my enthusiasm for this great energy and synergy about really improving experiences of students. So thank you.
100%. I really think that school counselors, you guys are critical in this conversation. You are the trained professionals on how to develop relationships and safe spaces for students. So anytime that you hear conversations that's happening around the chronic absenteeism, we want to empower you to step into those spaces, because those groups at your school desperately need to hear the voice of the school counselor. All right, Alexis Jackson, I am going to turn it over to you, and we are going to talk about House Bill 142 vaping. I am going to stop sharing my screen because it looks like I have the wrong thing linked there, and turn it over to you, Alexis, so that you can share yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, we're really excited to be here and to get this information out. So I will be quick. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexis Jackson. I'm the Tobacco-Free School Specialist with the Kentucky Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program at the Department for Public Health. I also have my colleague Jackie Hodges with me on this call. She is the Youth and Prevention Specialist with the program, and she'll be here to jump in now and then and help me with facilitation after the presentation. So I am here to talk about, providing support to school districts on HB 142, now known as Kentucky Regulatory Statute 158.149. I do have a resource to share with you. It is our new HB 142 recommendations and resources document. I've got the QR code here to scan, but I'm actually, in the essence of time, going to put a link to the document in the chat. If you ever need this document again or need more resources, you can reach out to either of us with via email. I'll have that on the last slide. It's also accessible on our Tobacco Free Schools website, and I've got that shortened link here at the bottom. So that takes you to our general Tobacco Free Schools website where that document is linked, along with various prevention and cessation resources as well. So what I'm going to do is this presentation is pretty much just a roadmap through the document that I just linked in the chat. I'm going to skip over a few slides, but this is just a brief overview of the history of like the evolution of the bill, how we got to where we are now, and what things used to look like as far as comprehensive tobacco-free policies across the state before June 2019. When House Bill 11 was introduced. So yeah, let's take a look. I'm trying to figure out where the best place to start is with this. So in 2019, when House Bill 11 passed, establishing KRS 158.149, it was initially the use of any tobacco product, alternative nicotine product, or vapor product will be prohibited for all people at all times in all property, including vehicles, anything owned, operated, leased, or contracted by a local board of education. This also included and covered school trips, employees and volunteers, signage requirements, and also enforcement requirements. And also included an escape clause. And that's one of the major differences between House Bill 11 and the House Bill 142 that we know today, is that there was a clause in there that schools could opt out after a certain time period, and that is no longer the case. So after that July 1st, 2020 deadline, we did see, of course, a significant increase in comprehensive tobacco-free schools policies across the state. Actually, up to 97% of districts were covered. And then now, actually, as of August of this year, that's 99% of districts covered, or 170, which is really exciting. I'm going to skip over this and move on to just what the bill is. So let's actually start with Section 1, subsection 3A. So the distribution of evidence-based, age-appropriate nicotine prevention and cessation material to all students of the district at the beginning of each school year. And what we're hoping to do is get resources out to you to know how you can meet these requirements. So in the document, it has all this listed out in more detail with links to all of these resources. But we just want to go over it together. So ways that you can go about this: sending out a parent letter that includes information such as Quit Now Kentucky, which is our adult quit line, and then My Life, My Quit, which is for youth 17 and under. There are also a couple parent-oriented resources that you can send out, and I've got those listed here. And then also enlisting parent educators. There are various parent education programs that are available to you. And if you would like more information about those programs, those resources, and trainings, feel free to email me or Jackie about that, and we'd be happy to connect you. Next section, we talk about prevention. So having access to evidence-based, age-appropriate nicotine prevention throughout the year. So these are the recommended programs we have for that. So for grades K through 4, we've got Too Good for Drugs, and then Catch My Breath, including the additional supplemental parent activity. And then 5 through 12, you've got multiple options. So you've got Catch My Breath. There's You and Me Together Vape Free, which is through Stanford, and then also hashtag I Can End the Trend. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a program through the University of Kentucky that follows a peer-to-peer model where students go into schools, many of them with lived experience using tobacco products, and they provide these evidence-based presentations. And they offer a 3-part presentation at no cost, and they'll come to your school. The booking link is on that document. And again, feel free to reach out for that as well, and we can connect you to them. And then there's also Vaping Know the Truth and Aspire. And in the interest of time, I will refer you to those links if you would like more information. But these are all evidence-based, and again, broken down by age group and reading level. So when it comes to cessation, a lot of these resources are mentioned multiple times in different capacities. So again, Quit Now Kentucky and My Life, My Quit are wonderful options. There's also Not on Tobacco, or Not, which is a cessation group for students who want to stop using e-cigarettes. I want to make a note here that if you want to use this program, facilitator training does cost $400, but it is accessible to you and something that we could talk about further as far as funding to get that training done. And then the American Lung Association has a tobacco cessation quick reference guide for youth tobacco use. So making sure that your school health staff know about this resource would be helpful. And then also ensuring that cessation support is ongoing. So once these resources are given to the student, making sure that that's being kept up with. And also it's important to note that participation in these services and programs needs to be completely voluntary and cannot be required or mandated for the student to complete, but we have to have them on hand for use. So this next section that we want to talk about is regarding school employees and the requirement that they must enforce the policies. And then we just have some resources here about how to do that, including professional development offered by hashtag I Can End the Trend, and then ways to sort of build that into the structure within administration. So including policy information and required trainings for staff, including it in the handbooks. You could also discuss it during interviews when hiring, during in-services, anything like that would meet this requirement and would be helpful. And then also you can lean on your regional prevention centers and local health departments for help with that. So now we'll talk about discipline. So that's section 1, subsection 4B. And this has to do with confiscation and progressive disciplinary policies. So when adjusting your policy to be a comprehensive tobacco-free policy, we do have some model policy language examples that you could use. So Alliance for a Healthier Generation has great model policy that you could lean on. Also, the American Heart Association and the Public Health Law Center have the comprehensive aspect built into their policy model across the board. And then also, if you need resources for vape disposal once they're confiscated, there are resources for that as well too. And we have those listed here. But if you'd like to discuss that further, that's also something that Jackie and I could talk to you about. So now we'll go through the progressive discipline model. So after the first incident,
Alexis, I'm
yeah.
so sorry. I wanted to jump in and let you know we have 5 minutes. I wanted to give you a 5-minute warning.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So actually what I'll do then is, because that document really does lay this out so well, I'll just go over this quickly because I would rather focus on feedback and discussion, if that's okay. So yeah, so this lays it out. It's all in that document. So first incident, you need to provide that nicotine cessation information, and identify providers of those intervention services. And then also we suggest implementing a substance use assessment tool. There are online tobacco education courses that we recommend, such as In-Depth My Healthy Futures. Of course, the My Life, My Quit for youth, parent education, and then documenting the incident in Infinite Campus. For the second incident, again, with the progression, so before we have an online tobacco education class, now we're recommending in person, and there are the resources for that. And then the same things every time as far as substance use assessment, parent education, cessation information. Third and subsequent incidents, again, substance use tool, cessation information, parent education, but then sort of stepping it up with that in-person tobacco education component. So for My Healthy Futures, there's a 2-hour version that we suggest for the second incident. Third and subsequent, we recommend the 4-hour version. And then there's also in-depth as well. And again, links to that are in that document. And then there's also this additional component of having what is called a supportive discipline meeting or assigning educational community service. And then we have a resource for that if you're interested in the community service aspects and just looking into how we can incorporate the trauma-informed response basically to this disciplinary policy. And then here are some administrative requirements, which really have a lot to do with how we're making this information accessible to administration and the community, how we're using our grant funds, are we applying for grant funds, where do you go for things like that, and how can these funds be used to help meet the requirements of this House bill. So again, I am the tobacco-free school specialist. So if you have any more questions about this, please reach out to me, and I would love to talk to you about this more, because this really is a really important change and it affects everybody. So again, our hope is to sort of streamline those resources so that you all have them on hand when you need them, and then just to provide counseling moving forward to ensure that everybody is compliant with the new KRS. But yeah, that is my presentation.
Alexis, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here today. I again want to apologize for the short time that we had. I know we squeezed you a little tight there at the end, but we do want to open it up to any counselors that have any reactions, thoughts, comments to what Alexis has shared and the resources that they have developed for our schools to help with the tobacco cessation.
I will share that our plan originally was to get a feel for what your all's needs were, what your capacity was and current involvement with implementing the tobacco-free school policy within your district, what that look like. So if you have questions or if you have needs that maybe we can help you all meet, if you've ever been in a situation where you were addressing a student or a staff member and needed resources and didn't have them, if there's anything like that, we're happy to talk through that with you online here or maybe at a later time.
Thank you, Jackie. And I have to honestly say it was so nice to see after legislation had been developed that both your offices, y'all were together and created such a comprehensive toolkit for schools to use as they're trying to make sure that those legislative components are met. To our school counselor advisory, I want to encourage you to reach out to Alexis or Jackie about some of the needs that you have, experiences that you have gone through at your school around tobacco cessation. And if there is anything else that you need that you find would be beneficial to you and to your school when trying to help intervene on students' behalf when we see them struggling with tobacco use and vaping. All right. Thank you all for being part of our school counselor advisory meeting. I want to make sure to let everyone know that the next time I will add more Q&A time and discussion in there so that we do able to give your all's voices a chance to be heard, because that is something that we absolutely want. For those that joined a little bit later because you had crazy things going on at school or you were being pulled in different directions and we did not get your name at the beginning for attendance, if you could unmute and just let us know that you were here today so that we can mark you for attendance purposes.
I think I missed the attendance roll call.
Okay, so we have
Suzanne Gibbs.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone else?
Paula Moore.
Paula Moore. Thank you, Paula.
Harry Hall.
Terry Hall. Thank you, Terry, for joining. Jessica Longland. She is having some problems with unmuting. That's okay, Jessica. We got you. All right, you all, this concludes today's meeting. Thank you so much for making this a priority. And we look forward to seeing you at our next advisory meeting. I will be sending additional information about that. Hope you all have an amazing day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.